Lieutenant Colonel Lerner, welcome to 7:30.
Hi there, good evening.
Is there any new evidence about the blast at the hospital?
Indeed, we presented extensive information based on intelligence, operational data and aerial footage in order to get to the bottom of actually what happened. And we concluded that there was no IDF attack at the hospital. First of all, because hospitals are protected locations. We do not strike, target medical facilities. But in the aftermath of this event on the 7 p.m. on 2 nights ago, we checked and looked at all of the information. We found that there was no airstrikes, no ground offensive against the hospital, and no naval strikes. We found that our radars picked up the trajectory of the rockets. There were some 10 rockets fired at Israel at that time, and it went just over the hospital. And we also determined that in an interception of our intelligence capabilities of a conversation between two Hamas terrorists saying Palestinian Islamic Jihad launched rockets. One of them hit the hospital, the Al Ahli hospital, them saying it independently. We didn't only rely on that one conversation, we cross-referenced it with other intelligence sources. So and with that, we came to the conclusion there was no IDF strike. The trajectory was above the hospital. When we looked at the impacts on the ground, we understand those are not IDF munitions. Can I
just ask you a question about that? How could an errant rocket cause so much loss of life?
So the rocket itself, first of all, we don't know the real numbers. The figures that are coming out are Hamas. Everything they do is manipulation. They butcher babies in bedrooms. They would have no problem lying to you. That's something that's really important to understand in this the whole scenario of the rage that has erupted afterwards. But when you launch a rocket, which is supposed to, Palestinian Islamic Jihad said they were launching a rocket to Haifa from Gaza, which is the largest distance. It didn't reach Haifa, but the amount of propellant fuel that it has was huge, and that's why, contrary to probably most of the rocket impacts that we've seen, you saw a big flame. And I would also say, there was another thing that was also apparent in the aftermath of that event. At 7 p.m., Al Jazeera in Arabic were broadcasting live, and they saw the rocket launches coming out of Gaza, and they saw one falling inside Gaza. So even if you don't believe or agree with what we're presenting, there was a live feed that was constantly being updated.
Let me just come in there, Lieutenant Colonel. Does Israel intend to go ahead with an invasion of Gaza despite the widespread horror in the world at the mounting civilian casualties?
We are currently recruiting and preparing for broadening and advancing our military operation to destroy and dismantle Hamas. This terrorist organization used the Gaza Strip as a staging ground to attack, brutally murder, rape, and abduct over 1,300 people. We are still conducting 200 funerals a day. There are 199 Israelis and foreign nationals being held hostage by this terrorist organization. We will never let them again use the Gaza Strip as a staging ground. They have to be banished from the realm of distance. Our ground operation.
We'll come back to that in a moment. But I just want to ask you this: for an army that says repeatedly that it doesn't target civilians, how is it that you've killed so many of them?
We go out of our way, like you, when you conduct military operations, to limit the influence and impact on the civilian organization.
I mean, that's the question that I'm asking. When you say that is the case, how is it that you have killed so many?
Here's what we do. We instruct people to leave an area where we're planning on striking by sending them text messages, by phoning them up, by dropping leaflets. We tell them to leave. Hamas tells them to stay. Hamas puts up physical barriers and checkpoints preventing evacuation of people. We have seen a huge mass amount of people that are actually listening to us, not to Hamas, thankfully, in order to enable us to conduct our operations.
Let me ask you. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Situation
Let me just
Sure,
ask
yeah,
you something
sorry.
that President Biden raised yesterday when he was in Israel. He urged Israel not to be consumed by rage, as the US was after 9/11. Do you accept that that is a warning you should heed?
We are in a battle on our existence, not a battle for vengeance. The reality on the ground is Hamas is a government, an institution of terror. It has utilized all of the tools of government to build a force that comes into our bedrooms and butchers our babies. It uses the civilian arena, the people of Gaza, as hostages. We have almost 200 Israelis hostages and 2 million Palestinians being held hostage.
Let me
We are
just come
trying
back.
to evacuate.
Yes, I
We're
understand
trying
that,
to evacuate the people of Gaza out of harm's way while they're trying to put them in harm's way.
But let me come back to President Biden, who has made it clear that he's giving his country's full support to Israel. He's obviously referring there to mistakes that America made after 9/11, when voices urging for restraint were rejected and even pilloried. How does Israel not fall into the same trap?
The IDF is a professional military. We operate based on three core principles: the principle of distinction, the principle of military necessity, our targets are military targets, and the third is the principle of proportionality. And there is a constant equilibrium where we're trying to balance out all of those threes in order to mitigate and limit civilian impact of the military operation, which is a necessity to rid this world of this terrorist organization.
Is 3,000 people and 700 children? I'm sorry, I beg your pardon.
That this organization, any decent person needs to understand that this organization cannot be able to use Hamas as use the Gaza Strip as a staging ground to kill and butcher people.
I think
that
so.
Is
The question that flows from
our enemy.
The question that flows from what you said there, Lieutenant Colonel, is about proportionality, and the question is about 3,000 people killed in Gaza since the savage attack on your country, including 700 children. How is that proportional?
Proportionality in warfare is not a numbers game, and we need to be very, very cautious about saying you only had 1,300 people butchered and murdered and massacred, and they have now 3,000 that are, and I don't even know that we can trust any of the numbers that Hamas are telling you. They have no problem butchering people. Why would they have a problem telling you lies? But I say this with a real heavy heart, any loss of civilian life is a true tragedy. It is a tragedy, nevertheless, caused by Hamas, who declared war on Israel. Israel is in a war of self-defense. And indeed, there are civilian casualties in this conflict, which is an unfortunate situation. But I'm sure you're not expecting us not to defend our civilians because Hamas are hiding behind theirs.
Let me ask you this. Hamas surely wanted Israel to invade. They expect it. Isn't a ground invasion giving Hamas what they want?
I think Hamas have underestimated the Israeli resolve. I think they thought that they could abduct hundreds of people and expect Israel to negotiate. This is a brutal, ruthless terrorist organization. I'm sure you've seen the horrific images that they themselves posted. Why would they post them if they're not proud of their actions? Why would they celebrate death? Why would they celebrate rape?
I think that's the question, that it puts you in the frame of mind that America experienced after 9/11, which is the question as to why you would give Hamas what they want, which is a ground invasion, which will inevitably lead to more casualties, which will inevitably lead to condemnation around the world.
I'll tell you what we want. We want to live in peace. We want to live in security. We want to live without the threat. When I was called into reserve duty, my day job, I'm a trade unionist. When the army called me up after that massacre, I kissed my wife and I said, I have to go. And then I said goodbye to my daughter, a 12-year-old daughter, saying, I have to go. And they have extremely underestimated the resolve of Israeli society, because we have no other alternative. This is a fight for our existence in a region where Hezbollah are watching, in a region where they are constantly testing the ground for new ways to terrorize the Israeli population. We cannot permit that this will be the new norm of terrorism anywhere in the world. It can happen here, it can happen anywhere. We can't permit that to happen.
Lieutenant Colonel Lerner, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.